Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the start of our summer term. Bit of a strange one this time, not the summer term we would normally expect, but this will be a great summer term and one we will remember. Last Thursday was the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Stalag 9B. This was a prisoner of war camp in Germany. And when the liberating soldiers drove up to the gates of the camp, they weren't sure what they were going to find, because these camps were pretty terrible places. But what they did find was absolutely remarkable, because at the gate of the camp there stood a British soldier, and he was absolutely immaculate, proper uniform, everything smart, everything organised. And as they drove past, he saluted and let them into the camp. As they drove down the main drive in the camp, they passed rows and rows on either side of similarly immaculate British soldiers, the prisoners of war, all standing to attention and saluting as they went past. When they arrived at the middle of the camp, they were met by Sergeant Major J.L. Lord, a remarkable man, and he was immaculate. Shiny brass buttons, his trousers were pressed immaculately, and his boots hyper shiny. He looked as if he had just stepped off the parade square in front of Buckingham Palace. Remarkably, the camp that they had come into was like any British army camp anywhere in the world. But if those liberating soldiers had turned up 10 months earlier, they would have found something very different indeed. When the Sergeant Major was first captured and sent to Stalag 9B, it was a place where standards had really fallen apart. The prisoners lived in squalor. They looked a mess, there was poor hygiene, there was no discipline, and they had pretty much given up on everything. And it took 10 months of really dreadful conditions, overcrowding and hunger, and yet despite of this, the Sergeant Major transformed the camp. He brought back discipline, he instilled self-respect, and he gave the soldiers back pride in themselves. You see, the Sergeant Major understood the power of self-discipline to allow anybody to overcome pretty much any difficult or challenging situation. Now, he knew that he couldn't get these men out of the camp, but he also knew that being disciplined, having them do the normal things that they would have done as soldiers, and doing them as well as they possibly could, he could give them back their pride and the resilience to get them through their time as prisoners of war. Now, at the start of this new summer term, clearly we are not facing the difficulties that those men and the Sergeant Major had to face. But there's something about this story that I think is relevant to us and something that we can think about. We're all in a place where we could very easily sit back and let our standards slip. Working at home means that we aren't sitting in front of a teacher, so it's easy not to concentrate just as hard. It's tempting to have your phone on your table beside you as you work, to have your earphones in your ear and the telly on in the corner. But the trouble is, if we start doing these things, everything begins to slip. We don't learn as well. Our assessment scores begin to take a dip, and when the time comes, it will be really difficult to get back into the proper way of working when we come back to school. Perhaps, worst of all, in our own hearts, if this is the way we start to work, we will know we're not doing our best, and we will lose some of our own self-respect. So this term, we all have to step up, and we have to keep our standards the way we would normally expect them to be when we're in school. I want you to imagine those demoralised soldiers and how they must have felt whenever the Sergeant Major turned up and eventually got them sorted out and back on track. We need to make sure that our standards don't slip. So I want you to imagine when you start your work in the morning that you have the Sergeant Major standing beside you. And as he looks down at the way you've laid out your work and the way you're organising yourself and the work that you do, would he raise an eyebrow and think to himself, there's somebody that really doesn't care about the work they're doing. There's somebody that doesn't really care about themselves. Or would he smile? And would he say to himself, now there's a Chigwell student, someone doing their level best. There's someone with self-respect. We'll say a prayer. Heavenly Father, this term will be a challenge for all of us, with new ways to work and a different type of school. Help us to keep our focus sharp and to keep our standards high, and look forward to the time when we will all be back together at Chigwell. May God bless you, your family, and everyone you love, this term and always. Amen. Now, go and wash your hands.